and the character screen. So we have these 3 screens so far. Just mock-ups. Here I was playing with the map. And I actually sort of like it already. I mean, realistically, what are the sizes of the phones? Like, it needs to work on this size, Pixel 5, iPad mini, thing that's almost not mobile anymore. On Galaxy Fold. Looks good. I'm happy with that. So the next step could be to implement this screen here, the map screen, with real data. So we want the player to spawn here, then be able to see the world and encounter the first enemies here already. So for that we're gonna create a new spawner, and we're gonna spawn some bees. And we're gonna only spawn NPCs in general on tiles that are walkable, which means that are not walls. So I can drag it on top of the lake. And the system will be intelligent enough to not spawn bees on these tiles here, just on the adjacent ones. Just gonna call it bee. So there's a high chance for the player to encounter bees in the starting region. That could be also the first fight that I'm going to implement. So I think our MVP within the MVP is having the player spawn here, being able to walk around, not walk on walls, so lake tiles or tree tiles or stone tiles or walls on the wall layer, and have the player fight the bee and drop some gold and a jar of honey, because that's what bees drop, and then pick it up and maybe eat the jar of honey and have a look at the character screen and the stats. I think that could be the first little iteration of the whole thing. I already know that this bit here will be tricky because I want the player to be somewhat centered. So I want this image to grow sideways as well. So, I mean, towards the left. Not sure I'm happy with the chat. Let me just call it world. Then it's easier on the eyes to scan the chat. Alright, let's implement the first screen. So For that, we need a main app. So it's time to create an app. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna start app main. It's gonna generate me a main app that can move into my game folder, because that is how I organize things. In here we have some empty files mostly. I need to do a few adjustments. I need to rename the app, so it's game.main, and I also need to add it into the list. I'm gonna add it to the list of installed apps here, game main. And in the main app, there's a file called the URLs. No, there's not. I'm just gonna create one. So it's pretty much this, and now I can start to think about my routes. And I think I'm gonna have it like I do right now, maybe map, and from views import map view, inventory view, character view, and settings view, kind of as a placeholder for now, because we don't have these classes. Inventory and settings view. Now in our views module, we're gonna create some placeholder views for the map view, for the character view, and for the settings view. And for the inventory view. I try to kind of use the same order here for my views, even though I don't have to, just so maintainability is a bit better. I'm not using that render function because I'm using class-based views. And we're gonna work on the map view mostly for now. So it's gonna be this map HTML. There was an explosion here. Interesting. Maybe fireworks. So we're gonna use a template view. Template name. It's gonna be main.map.html. Which means we're gonna use the template on the left hand side. And I'm gonna start developing from outside in. It's actually a game screen view. And game screen view is a I think that's fireworks. Tell Marple, can you hear that? Fireworks. So every view here is inheriting a base, as a common base view. And that base view is taking care of the chat, it's taking care of the navigation, and that stuff I'm gonna have in a parent view class called GameScreen. Just gonna add those type annotations so Pyrite can do its job. And so the chat is dependent on the player. So we need to get the player or the user. I'm going to assert that the user is authenticated. Then I know, or the type checker knows that it's an actual user. And then we can fetch the player of the user. And using the player, we can get the chat that is specific to that user, to that player, I mean. So the player will mostly be our entry point, like everything is attached to the player, almost. At least when it comes to those game screens. So the principle I'm using here is called use first, and I build mockups pretending I have all the backend in place, all the views in place, database models, and now I'm building the views that are rendering those mockups, and I'm pretending I already have the service layer or the model layer. And now I discovered I need something called player, and I really like this principle of use first because it avoids building things that you don't need, and you have a concrete use case for the thing you're building. So you know that the thing you're building, it works for the thing that you're using right now, if that makes sense. From models, import player. I'm just gonna pretend it's there already. I can go there and make a class player, which is a Django model. I'm gonna omit the fields for now. Oh yeah, I always wanted to use Django extensions, so check timestamp super class. Tell Marble, can you hear those explosions, or is it just in my head? So, players here. We need two methods of user and get chat. can also do it more idiomatic and create a player manager. That has a is it actually idiomatic if I'm just looking for one user? Let's not make it unnecessarily complex. So I'm just gonna return a player here. And in order to make these type annotations work, we need to import future or annotations from future. And it's a static method. And what was the other one? Self-request user, anonymous user. Well, not really, I'm asserting, but okay, let's make the type checker happy because I don't know how to fix it properly now. Let's just do it that way. Get chat. Or just chat. No. What's the chat? The chat is a list of things that was a list of things, a list of someone saying something at a certain time. That is what the chat is. That is what the chat is. So it's an instance method, and we return the simplest thing that we can think of right now, and it's a date time. Date time? What is the right thing here? I'm gonna return a tuple, so I don't need to create a class for this, but I'm most likely will create a class in the future. So we're returning a tuple here because we don't want to decide on how the class looks like. So we're just gonna return plain data, string. What's the type for date time? So there is something from Django utils called time zone, and that thing is generating something of type, let's see, date time. Yeah, it's date time. Okay, we're gonna make the type checker happy because we return the empty list here. That doesn't make sense because it's an instance method. We can just call the method getChat. Then we have the chat, and everything looks good. Let's run the linter. Make checks, not a. So Frosty, what are you learning to code right now? Like which programming language? Are you learning Python? So test case is imported but never used. That is true. Then in views we have a template view that we don't use right now. We probably should use it. I feel like this should be a mixin and not a proper view because it's not returning an HTTP response. but then we have this issue here. We can just say for now this is a request. C# and Unity. Because then I could just do this. Template view could be the base view, and game screen mixin is just a mixin that enriches the context data with the chat. It's actually just a chat, right? Why? Maybe I could name it chat mixin. Yeah, it is pretty much, that's the only common thing in every screen. It's just a chat, so then it's just a chat mixin. Sounds less intimidating already. I wonder what the type of the Django request is here. HTTP imported request. Okay, I'm gonna do something really nasty. I'm just gonna ignore these types for now. And I'm gonna pretend everything is alright. So this is not used, this is not used. So the formatter ran. Created me a little div here. Now admin, so there's this little extension called Django extensions. It's like a bundle of utility things that are not really related to one another. And there we have like database model extensions, and I'm looking into using one of those. So for instance, we have the timestamp model, which creates a created and modified field. So this could be timestamped model, and I'm not sure. I think I'm only using it in locally, like not in production, and I have to use it in production as well, because it's only the dependency is only getting installed locally. So let's just put it here. No, actually, let's. So it was here. I'm gonna put it into base because I need it everywhere. That's what it means. And I think I only had it in local apply extension. And this guy here needs to move into this one. So now what I'm saying is that Django extensions, I need that thing everywhere. Timestamped model. Oh, it's coming from models. Timestamp model. Now I have activated and modified for free. So, and looking at this query here, I know that there should be a user associated with what I'm doing, with player I mean. So we have a models from Django DB import models, and we have a models foreign key to the user, and this is not the right user. models cascades. We want to remove the player once if the user gets removed. And we want to use the game.users.models user. Now we have our first little model. We can run the migrations. And why did I do that? I want to create a small admin UI for that. And there's this admin generator main. Which is creating... I need to run the migrations. And it's creating a little bit of code that I can just copy paste into my admin. And using that I can now create and edit and do those CRUD operations on players. That's a really cool thing about Django, by the way. So tests are run. Now the static type checker is complaining. Cannot access member as view for type character view. That's because, so the issue is, by the way, we're calling as view on things that are just empty classes. And we need to make them at least a view, a Django view. But I'm going to make it even more specific. I'm going to give them template view because we already have the templates. So this is going to be inventory. And this is going to be, I'm just going to paste from up here. And this is going to be character. Actually, probably the whole thing. And this is going to be settings. Didn't change the lowercase one. Settings. Okay, that should satisfy Pyrite. And we don't have any type errors anymore. Tests are all green as well. We can commit. Create skeleton initial skeleton for game for in-game views. I'll push that as well because I'm the only one working on the project, so I don't need to tidy up my history. So remember, the goal is to implement this here. We're passing in the chat. Which we can mock now. So we can could also make it type safe and say, so the chat is a list of subject, object, no. The chat is a list of things of someone says something at a certain time. And that someone could be of type user or none. And user is obviously user and none is the world or the environment, like a notification. Because then I don't need to pass in a string here and it's type safe. Not only at compile time, but more importantly at runtime. So here I could say this is a user or none. I believe this syntax is not supported yet in Python 3.9, so what this means, it's an optional user. So whatever value there is, it could be a user, it could also be none. And this is a nice way to signal the consumer of this function that whatever you get here, it might be user, but it might be also just none. So you better handle the case when it's none. And none is the absence of something. It's actually really important to have this type around. So I'm glad that Python got it finally. So this is the chat message. Maybe we need a color as well. Maybe we would like to have bootstrap 5 list group. Maybe we would like to have some kind of distinct color for the environment, for the world. Like this. So now it's a bit too much information to left unnamed. So the drawback of using plain data is that you don't really name things. So we could just say I'm returning a list of chat lines, and the chat line has a sayer. Which can be a user, but it can be null or none. And it has a created at. It has an actual message, which is a text field. Should it also have a target, I wonder? Let's keep it simple, I think. And for now, we're just gonna return chat line objects all, and we're gonna return the most recent 6. No, it should be possible to scroll, so let's say 50, maybe 25. And I always forget how to do slicing in Python. So what I do in the case, I just quickly open a Python shell and verify that if I do this, I get the last 2, and I actually don't, I get the first 2. So I need to do -2. That's how you do it. Cool, so we have our chat line. What I completely forgot is an input field for the player to chat. So let's add that. It's probably a small form. It's probably an input group and a small form. kind of like these here. Where are they? So we have another div tag in here, and below this one we have the chat input field, and we're only going to overflow on the chat content. Tell the world, that's a placeholder. Some accessibility feature as well. Chat input field. Chat input field. Yeah, I think that's a good description. Described by chat input. And this is chat input. It's a weird name for the tag. It should be describing, right? Primary. And it should be small. Player is not defined, so we have an issue here. I think we fixed it. It's just gonna be say. Something's annoying me about it. I don't like it. So it's growing. That's not good. Why is it not overflowing? Well, if I put overflow here, then the input field will also hide. And that's not what we want. So maybe I'm just gonna reduce that to 27, and I'm gonna add 3 here. That is kind of weird. Okay, much better. Looks a bit off with the borders and everything, but it is good enough for now. That is the motto today. It's good enough. And it scales down nicely. All right, good. So that's the chat. I can, by the way, create, like add the chat line as well to the admin app. And I can start adding it here. I can start using the real chat lines. Chat list. So I was also thinking we could add the coordinates here. 27. I just don't want to overwhelm the users by too many numbers. And I feel like it's very number based already. Later iteration, another problem that we need to take care of now. So let's make this one test driven actually. Let's write a chat test without having anything. So first we need to implement the chat, and then we can implement the spawning and walking, I think. And then let the players see each other. I think that would be really cool. And then we have our first little interactive game. So what I usually do, I create a folder, like I remove tests because I'm gonna create a folder tests, and then I'm gonna touch init to make it a Python module, and I'm gonna touch test views.py, and I'm gonna touch factories because I'm gonna use factory boy. So there are test views here. I'm going to import pytest, and I'm going to pytest db mark something something db, Django db. I don't know yet. Test chat view. And for that we need a client. So this is the pens injection that pytest does for us. From import client, no, from Django test import client and client. What else do we need? We need a player as well. and we're gonna log in the player. It's just chat probably. Main chat. And what's the data like? Data is just the chat line for now. Hello, this is a test. And we're going to assert that the chat line has been created. So we only have one chat line in the system, and we're going to assert that hello, this is a test is in chat line message. So this is the test. And if we run it, then it's going to fail. Fixture player not found, so let's go ahead and fix that first. So we said before we would like to have a fixture of type client and of type player. And PyTest is fetching that from this file here, conftest. And I'm gonna create a player using the player factory, which we need to implement next. So it's coming from game.main.tests.factories import player factory. Factories could not be resolved. Import factory class player factory Django model factory, and using the meta class we can say the model is a player. And the player is quite easy to construct. We just need to tell him where to find the user subfactory, because the player has a user. So we need to use the user factory. Cool. So that's that. Cannot find factories. Game main tests factories. Let's see. Main is not a registered namespace. I would love to just call it game. That namespace. Just game. But the whole project is called game, so. While I think about it, I'm gonna grab some more coffee.